If I could ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and just give us a quick overview of their role, and then we'll kick off. Please.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So my name is Ravi, and I'm from HGC Global Communication. Used to be known as Hutchison Global Communication. It's about a year ago we were bought out by a fund company. Now we have a new beginning. It's been about a year, and in this topic of SDN is quite close to us because we manage a fixed network in Hong Kong, and of course we also have a global presence. We have been working hard to roll out SDN into our network, so we'll be happy to share that experience today. Thanks.
Please.
Good afternoon, I'm George Sloan. I work for AT&T. I've got responsibility for supporting our international network outside the US. So this is roaming, IoT, voice, and data.
Hello, I'm Eric Schwartz. I'm the president for EMEA for EQUINIX. EQUINIX is the leading global data center and interconnection company. We operate now more than 200 data centers across 24 countries around the world, including 15 countries here in Europe. We've deployed SDN in particular as part of the EQUINIX Cloud Exchange Fabric, which is an exciting offering for us.
Good afternoon, Peter Coppens. I'm responsible at COLT for the product portfolio. In our portfolio, we have two live applications of SDN. One is the network on demand, real networking on demand, and the other is SD1.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carl Roberts, CCO of EPSILON. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted to be on this panel today because SDN is at the heart of what we're doing to disrupt the consumption model for ICT services in the industry. So looking forward to a good debate here.
Great. So just to kick off, I'm just curious about where the industry is, what stage of development SDN is at. So what has been achieved so far, and where do you think what stage of development are we at? Carl?
Well, I think if you take a look around the world, what you'll find is that by the end of this year, most carriers will have some kind of SDN fabric in their infrastructure. So, you know, we're not talking about a hypothetical future. We're talking about a reality of today. You know, we at EPSILON are just upgrading our global infrastructure with the newest technology, which gives us all the flexibility to provide these services. And in reality, what we're facing now is a situation with, you know, for large carriers, how to deal with the transition from the legacy into the new world. And for those actors who are fully into SDN, how to realize the true potential of SDN through APIs, because, you know, it's never been more true to say that software is the future of connectivity. We're right in the middle of that. It's our mantra, because ultimately we're taking the complexity of networking, demystifying it, making it simpler, and actually giving control back to the end user. So it's exciting times.
Great. Peter, I know COLT has done a lot of interesting things in SDN. Where do you think the industry is at?
So if you look back like 2-3 years, SDN was mostly a bunch of slides.
Yeah.
At the moment, if you look at it now, it's reality. So we have a few hundred enterprise customers that are buying, consuming, networking in an on-demand way. They select the A end, they select the B end, they select the service between, they press the button, and it's not just ordered, but it's delivered instantaneously. Obviously, there are constraints. Both sides need to be on our network, but we have like 20,000 plus buildings connected, so it's quite a big estate.
And Eric, coming from a data center background, how do you see SDN influencing your business?
So I think what's interesting to associate is that at the same time we've been going from chartware to software, as Peter described in the network, the IT infrastructure has been going through a radical and arguably violent transition of its own to the cloud. And so, you know, EQUINIX as a data center operator, we clearly see the growth not only in the networking space and in the ongoing activity around mobile and internet, but we clearly see the growth of cloud applications and cloud requirements. And so the particular perspective that we have on SDN is how the network is evolving to enable and facilitate cloud deployment, cloud integration, and cloud applications. And there I think we're earlier more so than later, because I think the technology and the software is are providing better ways to do what customers have always tried to do and struggled with prior technologies. But I think there's still quite a bit of creativity and innovation coming, as Carl said, as you turn the APIs and the control back to the users, and they recognize that there's more capability that they can operate from their perspective with APIs and portals than they have in the past. And so, that integration and melding of the network and the cloud, we have a ways to go, in my opinion, and those innovations are still in front of us.
George, what's the state of play for SDN
So,
from AT&T's perspective?
yeah, so Carl's right. I mean, we did start with slideware 3 years ago. I was part of that. But we're at AT&T and a lot of our partners, we're actually making this happen. We had a bold commitment to the public that we'd be 70% software defined in terms of key network functionality by 2020. Last year we were at 55%. Our target this year is to be at 65% at year end. So it's happening. And it's our belief, and a lot of companies that are telecom companies are at this conference, our belief is it's a perfect opportunity, a window in time to do this in a collaborative fashion. That's why you see groups out there like ONAP, for instance. Our belief is we need to do this as a community, do it in an open fashion. I think people know that ONAP is Linux-based, right? So it's open content. And our perspective is we can get that speed that Carl's talking about if we do it collaboratively.
Ravindran.
Yes. Yeah, so my take is for us, it's a no-brainer that we all need to evolve into the software layer in order to provide a similar services as what other OTT companies are providing. It's natural. On our perspective, we have been looking at how to define and create a software defined within our data centers that we own. This year, we're trying to expand that into our own coverage internationally, where within our POPs worldwide, we are making network available. I think what is more exciting is the application and the service that we can provide to our clients that would enable them to have a choice to take network to a B location, to take a cloud, to take a private network. I think that's where the opportunity lies. And we hope as a service provider, if we, as what George was saying, we can create that interoperability fabric, then we will be able to really open up and unlock the value of our network with that, touch of a finger.
Excellent. So if SDN has existed on slides for years and years, why now? Why is SDN come to the forefront now? What has changed, and why does it need to happen now? George?
So for us, the journey started with cost. We were looking at the traditional steps in adding functionality or new technology, and historically we all know that it was about forklifting hardware, right? We were all writing off proprietary hardware and software. And it was robust and it worked, right? But the cost was immense. If you want to go, for example, in the mobile industry from 2G to 3G, right? It's forklifting, right? With SDN now, the theory and the reality is we're pushing software out to white boxes, right? And you get new features, new functionality. You can fix your system. It becomes more robust, right? In a timely fashion. So for us, it started with cost, right? But now the beauty is, and we're all talking about this, it's not just cost, it's speed for the customers, right? And it's potentially collaboration amongst all of us, interoperability.
So it went from cost to capabilities, I guess.
That's right.
So any other thoughts, Peter?
No, it's pretty much the same. So for example, with AT&T, we have done already 2 years ago, we did a proof of concept where we married the two APIs from the AT&T side and from the COLT side to show that end-to-end you can fully automated deliver an end-to-end networking service, completely automated without any manual intervention. So that was shown like 2 years ago. In the meantime, a lot happened, of course, and now this capability, 2 years ago was a proof of concept, now the capability to deliver this real networking on demand is live. It's out there, and it's being used by customers business as usual. It's of course still small compared to the overall market, but it's growing fast.
Carl, as kind of a challenger brand that EPSILON is, why has it made such a big push into SDN and made it part of, I guess, the whole?
Look, I think evidently it was easier for us to make the transition because we don't have, tens of billions of dollars of legacy to transition over. But that said, it's important to us why. Our mantra from the beginning of our existence has been connectivity made simple. And networks have gone from voice networks, networks built for internet, a lot of point-to-point stuff. Now networks are there for cloud services. And when you look what's revolutionized our everyday, you don't really take taxis that much anymore. You go to Uber, right? Use Airbnb. These are all in the cloud, in the cloud solutions applications. So this wave of everything in the cloud has coincided with the technology in the switching fabric, which has moved from hardware-based to software-based. So you get a marriage then of these new models of actually delivering services with the agility that you get from taking the analytics from the software, which SDN providers provide. So as I said earlier, it kind of demystifies the whole thing because it allows our customers to create new services on the fly for their customers. And what I think is fascinating with this whole story is that, for a number of years, especially when there were what I call the OTT wars, okay? People in the, let's say connectivity business were viewed as, well, that's not where the exciting stuff is happening. It's pipes. They may be clever pipes, but they're still pipes, and all the cool stuff is happening elsewhere. In reality now, the cool stuff is back and happening in the network because as software plays a bigger role, the flexibility, the on-demand aspect, and getting to be able to provide on a global basis to customers the experience which goes click, connect, configure, and consume, it's just fabulous. And for us, that's part of us staying loyal to our mantra of keeping it simple. Behind that, there's a lot of smart stuff because software is for clever people. But to George's point, the hardware element now is just, it's the engine. On a lot of the platforms out there now, it's the same engine that powers multiple machines in the range or boxes in the range. The difference is in the software. And for us, as a challenger, as you say, being able to provide this capability to the ultimate end user who's an enterprise somewhere allows us to provide the flexibility that these customers have been craving for years, which candidly some of the larger carriers who have not got to that point yet cannot do. So we provide something that today is quite unique. It's obviously less and less unique, and we have different value props that will continue to make us unique going forward. But going back to what I said at the beginning, this is here and now, okay? And for the foreseeable future, it's going to be the engine for driving innovation and disruption across the whole ICT ecosystem.
Right.
And then if I can add,
Please.
I think SDN here also as a service provider, we see this as a way to keep your customer in your network. Imagine that you have a 100 gig port made available to your customer, and on top of that, you can actually make available services that connects to various locations and also to the cloud and platforms. So in a way, if you can make that deliver well, and if you make that ability to deliver across your partner's network, then you are able to keep the customer in your ecosystem, and hopefully with the service level and in a self-provisioning way, instead of all those tedious network. I cannot imagine 1G will be activated by an account manager or a provisioning manager any longer. It has to be activated by the client themselves and deactivated by the client themselves. We don't have that sort of scale anymore to do that activation.
First of all, it's gratifying to hear Carl say that we're all back in the cool place. So my children have been asking me when I would be cool again. And so It's good to be back. But I think the other element to consider is what's being expected from the network, and Carl was pointing to this looking ahead, is changing, and it's changing faster than the historic approach could have dealt with. And so whereas the network really was an afterthought for many of the internet applications and web surfing that we'd seen historically, with the growth of data, the growth of cloud, and the growth of the need for real-time, and all of us in one form or another looking ahead to 5G, the expectations for the performance of the network are not going to be solvable by capacity and bandwidth as they might have been in the past. And so the acceleration of SDN is partly about cost and it's partly about flexibility, but it's also, I think, ultimately for all of our collective survival in terms of what's to come and how to ensure that the network capability keeps up with the software development cycles and innovation cycles that we're seeing on all of the companies that are downstream from us in the value chain. And so it's exciting to be where we are, but I would also say it's probably sober to recognize that everyone around us is moving at least as fast, if not faster, in their innovation cycles, and that's going to put pressure collectively on the industry to catch up and keep up.
Excellent. Ravindran made an interesting point about customer and the customer behavior is changing. Are your customers asking questions about SDN? And if they are, what kinds of questions are they asking you about it?
Well,
Please.
I'll start. So EQUINIX actually has two categories of customers. One are the internet and corporate customers who are using our facilities for hosting and housing, and their questions are very much about how do I get access to modern, if not state-of-the-art networking capability for cloud integration, application integration, and the like, and how do they get access to that now when their internal capabilities are unfolding and developing in real time with the industry. The other class of customer that we have are the carriers and providers, service providers. And their question to us is a little different, but equally salient, which is they're building their infrastructure, whether it's as a large carrier or as an attacker. But the recognition is no matter how large anybody is, nobody's big enough to stay ahead of the world. And so they're coming to us asking how does the SDN capability that we're developing help them accelerate and augment their own offerings to their customers and do that faster, higher quality, potentially at low cost, so that they're sharing the innovation load rather than trying to do it all themselves. And so that then puts a challenge to us of how do we develop a platform that can be incorporated into multiple other platforms interoperably and more quickly than the sort of NNI or even more prehistoric ways of approaching network connectivity.
Please.
So our customers, a lot of them are retail, so you're thinking about branches of banks, for example, local manufacturing sites, and their questions are more about flexibility and speed. So they see SD-WAN, for example, as a way to go faster in terms of turning on capacity and getting to a point where it's actually capacity on demand, self-service, as well as functions, right? As opposed to historically when we had to have physical routers, right? Now we're talking about being able to turn a dial and get a virtual router, right? So it's about flexibility and speed for our customers.
Any other customer question? Carl? Please.
Yeah. I think there are many customers who don't even fully comprehend what they could achieve by using SDN-based solutions. And I think there's a big kind of piece of education out there. I mean, to your point, George, you get customers coming back and asking you, what can we do, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's kind of incumbent upon us also to have that kind of teaching, if you will, is did you know that with this kind of fabric, you can accomplish the following? And cost is one major item, but also I think more so it's about flexibility. It's about being able to have solutions that follow business cycles so that you can have large pieces of bandwidth and solutions on demand If you're a retailer, maybe you want a huge chunk of that in December because on the run up to Christmas, that's 40% of your turnover. And then July, August, you don't need it. The ability to modulate what you're doing in the business, understand your business better, and through the whole piece and analytics, understand your business better, maybe come up with different business models. And that's much more of a consultative relationship with the customer as opposed to talking about, pipes. Yeah. So it's a very, very different world.
Excellent.
And if I may, I think it depends on the service is taken up by the IT side of the business or taken up by the telco side of the business. They tend to look at their software-defined network in a different light. So I think the acceptance from the internet community is that you need to have this in day one, otherwise, don't come and talk to us. But from the telco side, they have a different perspective. It takes a while for them to warm up. It took us a few years to even introduce a multi-VLAN concept. The questions also about security, about how's the overrun of the VLAN into another VLAN. So I think the questions are slowly, the line is blurring, and there's an overall acceptance to it. But I think it still needs some time to reach. And then there's quite a number of issues that has to be tackled before we can clearly say that we have overcome and be able to provide an SDN that is truly what the customer is asking for in terms of reach and service level.
Excellent. So we've got great questions coming through on slido.com. So just to remind everybody, you can post questions through using the app. I'm going to ask a few of these questions. It says, is SDN a solution looking for a problem? Who exactly are the customers who need bandwidth for 1 hour or 1 day? Peter, please.
Yeah, so SDN is, of course, it's a technology, it's a framework. There are different use cases. We are focusing now on the network on demand. You could also look at SD1 as another one. But if you stay with the network on demand, in the end, we have to show to our enterprise customers, we have to show that it exists, they start using it, and then they start adapting their behavior. So in some way, this question is correct. They start, for example, they've been buying cloud services for a whole time. They are used to do that in an on-demand way. The network has been very static, very inflexible. When they can do it, they start changing their behavior. They're not like changing every hour, obviously, but they have the capability now. They start doing it.
Excellent.
So just one example.
Okay, I can give you some concrete examples. Maybe not for an hour, but I can give you a day, a weekend, and a couple of months. So, an example of a day. Okay, I met a gentleman a couple of months ago who owns the company. Does all the special effects for Game of Thrones. Okay,
Wow.
Lots of big media, and sending people on planes, stuff on DHL. And said, you guys provide connectivity solutions. You can't give me a big pipe for a day or an hour or anything, so I'm not going to pay 12 months of contract just for that. I said, but you can today. Seriously? Absolutely. Doesn't need it all the time. When he needs it, he needs a really big pipe. You can go into an on-demand platform, turn it up, use it, and when he doesn't want it anymore, turn it down. So that's the kind of day scenario. Another scenario. I'm sure there's lots of people in the room who like watching Formula One, even though Mr. Hamilton didn't quite do it this last weekend. TV companies, they need big bandwidth for their main transmission or for their backup over the space of 3 days over a weekend. They don't need a 12-month contract in that specific geography. They need it from providers like ourselves. But guess what? That's something that we do as well. Yeah. You're staying with sport, Olympic Games, World Cups, same deal. So there are use cases, very banal, ones that you kind of don't really think of. But here are 3 examples of a day, a weekend, and several weeks when people need to have these on-demand solutions to deliver things that we're all interested in.
Carl's right. There are those examples. Pop-up stores are another example, right? We have a customer that is in Formula One, for example, same thing. But I think the broader thing is it's absolutely not a solution looking for a problem. It's a speed thing. Customers and these CIOs, with other industries, they're able to turn dials and get processing power or disk storage, right? They want that from us in our industry, right? And SDN is an enabler to make that happen.
Sure. Ravindran, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think while we would like to be the flexibility and the capabilities there to give on demand, but I think we should not say that, or we would not want to say to the market that bandwidth on demand is going to be the future, because I think we all have invested network. When we give a bandwidth to a certain party, the rest of the bandwidth, if it's not when it's not underused, then there's a cost to it. But I think how I would like to say is that it's just imagine yourself walking to a Sainsbury where you want to get one item, but you can also get 100 other items available. So you have you are able to tell your customer, hey, come to my shop. I have got a host of items available. So you're creating an ecosystem and marketplace that allows you to reach, that allows you to take an Amazon, that allows you to fire up a virtual machine as what you need, or order any other application or software layer. This is our hope. And bandwidth on demand is one of also an evolution or rather an additional services to provide. Otherwise, we'll all have a problem with the network.
Excellent. There's more questions coming through, so I'll just plow through them. Does SDN open up new revenue streams for carriers, or is it simply replacing traditional hardware-based solutions? So is this about capturing new revenue?
It's not replacing. I think there's absolutely a place for MPLS, for IP broadband, for 4 and 5G, right? We see it as a revenue opportunity, right? Customers that you might use 4G to get a circuit quickly, well, you got to get pipe in place, right? That's a great sale point, right? You use the 4G, then you get the pipe in place, and then, by the way, they keep the 4G on the SD-WAN as backup, right? So now you got 2 pipes, and that's absolutely revenue opportunity. One example.
So one of the things we're seeing with our customers and partners who are operating their own networks is that the SDN capability that they can match and marry between their platform and the EQUINIX Cloud Exchange enables them to provide a broader proposition to their customer. And so, whereas in the past they might have been offering a WAN solution, whether it's MPLS or something else, and then even a separate division offering IT and integration capabilities, they're now in a position to combine those and make a combined offering, cloud and network, cloud and WAN, and to provide their customers with that cloud access and cloud connectivity in a way that they couldn't before. And so, there's no doubt that these the SD-WAN enabled capabilities are a potential substitute for some historic applications. And whether it's substitution or attack or displacement will depend on who you are and where you are in that account. But the capabilities and the revenue opportunities as the network service providers look to expand the scope of their relationship with their clients, those are extremely tangible and real today.
Yeah, my take is that traditionally service providers like ourselves tended to be focused on a segment of the business, predominantly network. But now with the enablement of defining it on the software layer, we now can offer a broader spectrum of services that maybe in the previous era is an area that we did not touch. For example, we may partner a security application service provider that can come into our marketplace, where now they partner with us, and we may be able to sell their services or partner their services to offer a more encompassing solution to our customers. So these are now able to be done much more faster, speed. We all want data quicker. We want a download of a web page faster. So the network operators like us also have to go with the same speed. So these tools allows us to actually not encroach into the sector that we are not supposed to, but we are able to grow our revenue in the peripherals and offer a broader solution as expected by the customers.
Yeah, and this is where we can get into the even cooler zone, right? Because what we can do, and to George's point about enablement, you know, the CPaaS, PaaS, SaaS players who, you know, it's a rising tide. As I mentioned earlier, you know, it's one of our fastest growing segments. These are outfits that have incredible, you know, industry solutions, and they need to be able to become global really quickly in an uncomplicated fashion. And yeah, as an example, you know, one of our customers is in fintech, fantastic solution, but they needed to be able to provide reliable connectivity services to, you know, New York, Frankfurt, London, Paris. They didn't have the time to go around, talk to anybody else, came to us, and in a few clicks they were away, and that made them global. And that added new capability, so that's the total upside. It's a solution that traditionally they wouldn't have been able to do, certainly not quickly. It would have been cumbersome, taking a long time to do. And that's just one example, one tiny example. When you think there's hundreds of thousands, if there's not millions of these players out there. So the opportunity for me is all upside. And you know, to the point made earlier, it's about enablement. There's disruption all over the place, and we become a vehicle for this. And we need to make sure that it's reliable, it's dependable, it's flexible, and it's secure. And that really does put us into a much cooler place.
Yeah, maybe broadening the question a bit. We were talking about revenue. If you look at what's maybe even more important, bottom line, margin contribution, there obviously SDN takes out a lot of cost as well, which is tied up in all the manual provisioning, all the manual steps. That's an enormous cost burden. The telco industry is known for having a price erosion. What 10 gig costed 5 years ago is only a fraction now. You have to move forward upwards with the bandwidth, and at the same time control your cost. So there it plays also a big role.
Excellent. So we got more questions coming through. So
Yes, I can see that.
you want that? Okay. This one's specifically about SD-WAN. Do you think SD-WAN is a threat to operators' managed services?
Okay, maybe I'll
Want to jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
I think we have a view that SD-WAN is eating into the MPLS business. I think this is without a doubt, the market is always looking for new ways and means to connect. But I think I would also like to, put it the other way around. I think it now opens an opportunity that was not served before. If you look at how designs of network now takes place, is that as more and more corporate customers have more outlets and reach to their end customers, so they have, for their design, there is a hybrid approach. So for their network, for their office, for their warehouses, they may have a dedicated. But to reach out to their outlets, they may now use boxes that allows them to have multi-hundred boxes. So a play of hybrid exists. In the previous era, probably this was only served in a 4G environment, which is not connected to the overall network. So now I think it's an opportunity for us. I don't see it much as a threat. I see more as a way for us to add value on top of our MPLS service layer. That's my
Thoughts on threats?
Agreed. No, like I said before, we think that MPLS and SD-WAN coexist. You can, I think it's, like I said, a revenue opportunity. You can have MPLS, you can have internet, IP access, and with 5G, have 5G, right? So huge opportunity for us as carriers. And then the beautiful thing is you can also sell VNFs, right, on the same box.
Excellent. Absolutely. Still more questions. So do you guys see geographical differences? A lot of global businesses on the panel here. Do you see geographical differences in the speed of market uptake for SDN? And are there differences in what is driving revenue in various markets?
I'll start off. Initially, certainly the experience at EQUINIX was that we saw more adoption and uptake in North America, so US and Canada. But over the past, I would say, 12 to 18 months, we've actually seen accelerating activity in EMEA and APAC to where the levels of adoption are quickly converging. And so, if anything, the rate of adoption here in EMEA that we've seen of late has been faster than what we've seen in America. And so, the differences, I would say, part of it, at least for us, is that the cloud markets have been more advanced and aggressive in the US and Canada initially, and that's now propagating into Asia and now EMEA. And so that certainly drove the activity in the Americas to start. But now here in EMEA in particular, just the nature of Europe with multiple jurisdictions, multiple countries, local providers as well as regional providers and global providers, that dynamic is different. And all of us who work here in Europe understand that. And so the desire to both accelerate network services in general, but then deal with the fact that the cloud deployments are not nearly as ubiquitous across every country as they are in the other regions is something that's unique here to Europe and that we're seeing quite strong activity around.
Any thoughts on uptake?
I agree totally with Eric, and I think what we'll see in the coming year or two will be a huge uptake in LATAM. Look at some of the analyst reports. It's a very small base, I mean, virtually inexistent. But the interest, when you talk to the carriers down there and some of the other service providers, system integrators, et cetera, suggests that there'll be a very rapid uptake there. So basically, the only continent that's still, I guess, quotes unquote, lagging would be around Africa, really.
Excellent. I'm just going to open it up to the floor. Is there any questions from the audience? Everybody's using Slido now, so. If you do have a question, you can put your hand up and Francis will come around. So just jumping around a bit with different topics, I'm kind of interested in how SDN is influencing your business internally, your business culture. How do you, what kind of changes have you had to make, maybe from a mindset perspective, rather than just a physical connectivity perspective? Peter, please.
So obviously, compute and network are coming together. It also means that in the past we had an operations department that was looking at the network. We had an operations department looking at IT. They have different skills, different teams. They didn't have too much to do with each other. Now with having to maintain network on demand and SD1, etc., you can't split those two anymore. So we had to make organizational changes. We had to do some upskilling, which is still ongoing. And we had to also look and hire some external new skills. So that's one element. The second element that we see is that the rate of change is increasing. In the past, you could have Cisco Juniper CPE, put it somewhere, and as long as there was not a big security issue, it could be left there more or less for a whole time. Those days are over. With now, in the software world, there's every few months a completely new release. It's a completely different time scale that we have to adapt to.
Excellent. Carl, have you had any tough conversations in your business?
What do you mean about culture? Yeah, actually, yeah. This is a very new world with a different way of thinking, and that's to what Peter was saying here. Everywhere from the engineering team to the sales team, and if you can't make that cultural adjustment, you will fail. It's not a question of you won't succeed. You will absolutely fail. Changing the way people think is probably one of the biggest challenges, because as much as the world of networking has moved from, and contracting and options has gone from static to fluid, the people need to do the same and need to be always challenging what they're doing, looking at things in a different way, incorporating the thinking that comes from application solutions delivered over a networking fabric. If the people don't make the journey and cannot be trained, then they have to get off the train. And we've done a lot. We've been lucky to have some smart folks who are very flexible and can and have made that change, but we've also had some folks who couldn't. And we've had to make changes. But it is a very, very different world, a very different world. You can't keep doing the same old, same old.
Agreed. And Peter mentioned skilling. That, for us, that's a big deal. We've got 250,000 employees at AT&T. Our leadership has been very transparent about the fact that we need to change. And the reality is you can't just go higher in the market. There's not enough STEM degrees out there to fulfill what we need to do, right? So we've been transparent with the employees. We partner with universities like Georgia Tech in the United States, with online universities like Udacity. We offer nano degrees. We've actually, over the last several years, racked up 18 million hours in training, right? And a lot of this is focused on data analytics and software, right? Because we're moving from this historical equipment-based company, right? Fixed lines, to one where it's all going to be about analytics and software. So for us, it's not just about hiring new people, it's reskilling the people we've got.
I also think the skills challenges and the delivery challenges are one set, but probably as dramatic, if not more so, that we see is that the nature of interconnection is changing. And so historically, the basic choices were either a cross-connect, which is physical and requires deployment, some carrier-mediated fixed deployment, which took a long time and had to be managed between two parties, or the internet. And of course, the internet was very fast and very fluid, but brought with it its own set of problems. And EQUINIX has spent the last couple of years investigating what we talk about as the private interconnection market. And what we're seeing is that private interconnection, meaning outside the internet, that's actually growing far faster than the internet. So, of all the things in business to seek, if you can find something growing faster than the internet, that's exciting. And the growth of that private interconnection is very much being facilitated by SDN and the flexibility and fluidity that it brings for companies and counterparties to interconnect without a cross-connect and without the internet. And so then the challenge is, where do you find the salespeople, the engineers, and the support people to deal with customers who are now executing these private interconnections use cases in a way that historically both interconnection companies as well as networking companies haven't really had to deal with. And that, I think, is a parallel challenge to the skills and delivery elements that were discussed earlier.
Excellent. Are there any questions from the audience? We're just about out of time. The panelists have been excellent in answering the questions, so I'll throw out a great big easy softball for you guys. What are you guys most excited about in your business in regards to SDN? What do you guys are passionate and looking forward to?
Yeah, I think for us, as I always said from the beginning, is I envision that we, as a service provider, we are able to provide an ecosystem for our customers, whoever they may be, a carrier, an internet company, a bank, or even a software app developer, a one-stop shop for them, a marketplace for them to be able to access their needs. And if that need is not available in our own network, then we will be able to allow them to have an extension to reach to our partner network. I think that would be a wish, or what we would like to achieve as service providers. And I think we in the GLF are aiming for that interoperability among our partners. And that would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I'd agree. At AT&T, we're real excited about just the interoperability between carriers, and then the speed and ability to be flexible in delivering services, capacity, functions to our customers.
Excellent. Eric?
This was mentioned a little bit earlier, but I think the network function virtualization that takes capability that has been in either edge boxes or other boxes and brings that software to the network above and beyond a lot of what we're doing today with SDN, I think that's, I think we're on the verge of that actually happening in a commercial, ubiquitous way. And when that happens, I think the power of the software and the network being operated by that software takes an order of magnitude leap that we haven't seen yet. And EQUINIX isn't going to be writing the software, and we're not going to be selling it. But I think the opportunity for us is to be working with customers to take advantage of that. And I think there's much more potential in front of us than we're utilizing today collectively.
Peter?
Yeah, so I think we've been sitting on a lot of potential for a very long time. If you go back just a few years, people were still doing paper order forms, faxing it, etc. If you now look at what's happening today, you can have networking installed in a matter of minutes, literally. We're taking out a lot of cost. It was just overhead. It's the agility, the customer experience that the others are talking about. So it's an exciting time, finally.
Carl?
Yeah, what I'm absolutely passionate and excited about is that this is all about enabling the future. It's also enabling a true collaboration across the ICT ecosystem where all the different players, the IT players, the apps providers, the connectivity providers, the data center providers, the internet exchanges, we all work together and we give the flexibility back to the people, as it were. And I think it's fantastic that today, as in a similar fashion to a very famous guy who said, "I'll put 1,000 tunes in your pocket," we can put hundreds of thousands of connections in our pocket today. And if, as an industry, we work together to make the APIs totally transparent, then there'll be millions in our pocket tomorrow.
Excellent, excellent. So I'd like to thank everybody who asked questions via Slido because it made my job extremely easy. And then I'd also like to thank the panelists for providing some excellent answers. So thank you very much.